Hey friends, today I want to talk about map pool design. It's not the sexiest topic, but I think it is important. And as we move into Stormgate, into the next generation RTS, it will become more important to think about. But of course, before we get into it, reminder that I upload videos pretty consistently here on YouTube, at least once every other day, VODs in 4K 60, detail things as they happen. And also, I stream on Twitch every Monday, EPT North America, 7 p.m. Eastern, EPT Korea every Saturday, 11 p.m. Eastern, and other events as they happen. I got Bayo Bashes happening about once a week, depending on player schedules, other things, you know the drill. So make sure to check me out on Twitch, and away we go. But I want to talk about map pool design today. For much of competitive Blizzard RTS history, the map pool size has been defined by the size of the longest competitive series. So for StarCraft 2, this has been the best of 7, or the BO7, which means that we have 7 games to determine the champion of our biggest events. And that means that we need 7 maps to do that justice, or vice versa. We have 7 maps in a pool, so then our best of 7 is the longest competitive format. However, this inherently deprives that best of 7 of a strategic component that is rather important in smaller series. In best of 3s and best of 5s, we have bans. 4 map bans, 2 map bans, respectively, in a best of 3 and a best of 5. The reasoning for this is quite obvious. With more maps in the pool than possible games played, we need some way to pare that pool down to something to pick from. So they have to be removed in some way. And also, in a best of 3, a single imbalanced map is more impactful. You want to knock those out. You want to make sure that you can have the most balanced pool possible in a shorter series. But the vaunted best of 7 does not suffer from this. Every map gets played in a championship, and of course there's solid reasoning for this. Fans want extended series, these best of 7s, to showcase the breadth and depth of strategies and environments that StarCraft 2 or other Blizzard RTSs offer. The removal of bans accomplishes this, or just the lack of bans in general accomplishes this, but it also constrains map design and player strategic decision-making in these longer series. In contrast, a 9-map pool opens up all manner of solutions to this problem. Currently, all maps need to be reasonably balanced in all matchups, lest they decide a hard-fought best of 7. The community at times has rallied against such maps, such as Beckett, which is, of course, rather strong for Terran versus Zerg. Dasan Station, same thing, ZVP. The list goes on. Again, strong maps. We don't want them to. We don't want to see those as Game 7 of a best of 7. It kind of tarnishes the entire series. They never really saw competitive play and were swiftly removed from the map pool on map turnover. Now Beckett is a exception to this, but that's more of a statement to the fact that maps are now lasting significantly longer than they used to. But that's, again, a statement on Blizzard's support for StarCraft rather than it is a statement on whether the maps are good or not. A 9-map pool, however, allows for interesting maps to exist. Maps that are imbalanced in one matchup, but provide interesting gameplay in others. All maps are currently limited to the amount of dead airspace, for example, allowed around mineral lines due to the presence of liberators. A 9-map pool would allow for one map, say, with much more dead airspace around those mineral lines, but it would just always be banned versus Terran, which again is fine because we have those extra bans in every setup. It's just, the end result would be similar to what we have now. The 9-map pool also allows for an even distribution of map archetypes across a map pool. And what do I mean by archetypes? Well, as far as I can see it, there are 3 specific archetypes that define an RTS map pool, right? You can have, or RTS map design. You have short maps, think like a Beckett on the extreme end, a submarine, that tend to end in 2 to 3 bases. They're very heavy pressure, very heavy pushing. You have standard maps that are kind of in the middle. They don't really have any defining quantities, just as they're standard, right? They're the vanilla ice cream of map pool design. 2000 Atmospheres, when that was in the pool, is a great example. And then you have these fortress, or these big maps. Maps like Glittering Ashes, Hardwired, Data C, that tend to give you 4 bases for free, that extend the game longer, that show us these 15, 20 plus minute long games that are also really cool. Of course, these archetypes are not perfect. Glittering Ashes, for example, is a map that was kind of in the short range on the bottom half of the map and then played more like a fortress map if we stay on the top half. But in general, they give us a good way of understanding how we can think about maps and where the maps exist. A 9-map pool would allow for an even distribution of 3 short maps, right? 3 medium maps or standard maps, and 3 fortress maps in any map rotation. But even more impactful is the fact that because of the 2 bans, even in the longest series, we're guaranteed at least 1 of every archetype. And likely even 2, and even better, we're guaranteed at least 1 experimental map of each archetype. In part because this ban setup gives room for experimentation. Pride of Altaris would fit perfectly well in the Fortress category, assuming that a Zerg is not playing on it. With the gold base, it was rather too strong for Zerg. Golden Wall would be perfect in that standard category. Again, maybe banned out in ZVT. Terrans don't like the long rush distance. And Beckett would be pretty viable for a map as long as we remove Terrans from the equation in TVZ. I reference recent maps, of course, that have seen variable amounts of critical success. Everyone loves Golden Wall, Beckett less so. But there are countless more options that could work within this framework. And even better, opening this freedom to map makers increases their room for experimentation, which gives us archetypes that we may not have even seen, or ideas that we may not have seen before. The 9-map pool, though, is useful for a second reason as well. It allows for more series planning and playstyle differentiation in these long series, in these best of 7 series. There is something to be said for forcing every map in a pool to get played. But this proposed framework ensures that we get at least 1, and likely 2, of every archetype getting played, while still allowing players the ability to shape the map pool to fit both their playstyle and to counter their opponent's playstyle. It also ensures that at least we get at least 1 experimental map in every best of 7, and again, likely 2, just because, well, there are only 2 total bans in that best of 7, 9 maps, you do the math. Not only does this allow for more map experimentation and playstyle differentiation, it also creates storylines, which when you talk about esports, arguably that's even more important. One of the most interesting components of the Astralis reign of dominance in Counter-Strike back in 2018, 2019, was their preponderance, their favor for a really picked map called Nuke. Nuke played a lot, very different from a lot of Counter-Strike maps at the time. It had 2 levels to it, the callouts were weird, and they were very good at it. So it forced other teams to either ban Nuke out of respect to Astralis' dominance, and then, well, Astralis has a free ban, or they have to pick it. Then that opens up the map pool even more. It builds that storyline. Will X team ban Astralis, or ban Nuke against Astralis? Will they pick it? What's going to happen there? We have this meta story that is evolving around the team's dominance on that specific pool. Another good example would be in Dota 2, where in TI5, Evil Geniuses, the eventual champion, played a hero called Techies, which no one else did. It was kind of a pocket pick that Evil Genius brought into the tournament, and teams just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't play well against it, so they were forced to ban it, which meant that Evil Geniuses was dealing with one less ban against them, and they could fit more broken heroes into their drafts, and really was one of the 2 big reasons that they won TI, that they won that $5 million. So it built storylines, and it added this additional subtext and interest to the maps of the heroes getting played. Will Astralis' opponents ban Nuke and allow them that freedom in the pool, or do they practice a counter strat and pick that strategy, pick that map or that hero, and really turn everything on its head? A 9-map pool would increase practice burdens for players, yes, but players I've spoke to in North America, in Europe, in Korea, all view this as an acceptable cost for the most part in favor of the benefits that we've been talking about. The addition of all 9 maps to the ladder pool would even alleviate the majority of this practice consideration, and we know StarCraft has the tech for it, right? Beckett was the 8th map of the ladder pool last season before they finally removed it. We have the tech. And StormGate, if you design from the ground up, we don't even have to worry about that. But even if it did not, players practicing certain maps at the exclusion of others would increase the storyline potential in the format. Say, for example, Lambo suddenly starts practicing Beckett in secret. He plays the Terran, he doesn't ban Beckett, he bans, I don't know, some other map that you would just assume to be in the pool. Suddenly the Terran's like, okay, what do I do? Beckett is now through. What's happening here? Does Lambo have a pocket strat? He does. Okay, that changes the story of this series rather significantly. So to sum it up, more maps means more bans, and more map flexibility. It allows for players to define the story of championships even before the games get started. Give us that overarching story. And opens the table for experimental maps that cannot exist in a 7-map pool due to single matchup balance considerations. All of these contribute to competitive storylines and add another interesting component to the viewer experience. But what do you all think? You know, this would be a significant change in how we think about map pools by adding those bands into a best of 7. Do you think it's worth doing? Do you think it's what we need? Am I just barking up the wrong tree? Well, I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. And folks, see you next time.